Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to, dig into some compelling ideas and bring you the insights that really matter.
That's the plan.
So today we're exploring a really fascinating YouTube transcript. It features Rabbi Itamar Schwartz. And our mission really is to unpack this powerful idea he presents about constant connection with the divine.
Right. Going beyond just, say, scheduled prayer times.
Exactly. Think about those moments, maybe you felt them, where you feel a bit alone, even if you're not physically by yourself. Well, this perspective we're diving into offers potentially a whole different way of seeing things.
It really does. What's so striking, I think, is how the Source invites us to see that relationship differently, not just as something we switch on at certain times,
Right.
but as a continuous dialogue, almost like a background frequency to our everyday lives. It definitely challenges the sort of standard picture of religious practice and, well, our personal connection to something bigger.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The transcript kicks off with this really foundational idea that every Jewish soul has this built-in desire.
A natural inclination.
Yeah, exactly. And not just a desire, but finds actual pleasure in speaking with the Holy One. That it feels good, essentially.
And what's really interesting there is how it frames the purpose of specific times for solitude for his Bodhisattva.
Okay.
It's not just about having those isolated moments. The deeper goal, according to the Source, is to use those times to cultivate that natural desire.
So it becomes constant.
Exactly. So that feeling of connection isn't just limited to when you're sitting down specifically to pray or reflect. It bleeds into everything else.
It uses a great analogy for this, doesn't it? The marriage one?
Yes, the comparison to a married couple. If you live with someone, you're constantly present with them.
You wouldn't just say, okay, we talk Tuesday at 7 p.m.
Right. It would be unnatural.
Yeah.
The constant presence should lead to more frequent, more spontaneous communication than just scheduled meetings.
And the implication is our connection with the divine should feel more like that, more organic, more ongoing. That's a big shift in thinking for many people, I imagine.
It absolutely makes you rethink what a truly, let's say, engaged spiritual life looks like. We often tie being religious to, the fixed prayer times, the specific ritual.
Sure, the observable stuff.
Yeah. But this points to something deeper, more internal, a way of being where that connection is just there, like a quiet hum under the surface of your day.
The transcript even references the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. It asks, essentially, was their communication with God limited just to when they formally prayed?
And the strong implication is no. It suggests their dialogue was much more fluid, constant.
Which leads to a pretty fundamental question the Source raises. We have this amazing capacity for speech. What's its main purpose? What's it really for?
And here the Source makes an interesting point, distinguishing a bit. For men, it suggests a significant part of their speech, ideally, should be focused on Torah study and talking about Torah. But then it poses this really thought-provoking question about women. Since they don't have the same obligation for formal Torah study, yet often possess a great capacity for communication.
How should they be using that gift of speech?
Right. And while it fully acknowledges how vital women's communication is within families, for kindness, for community building,
Of course.
it proposes that a significant portion of a woman's speech should actually be consciously directed towards the divine.
That really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About your own day. How much of your conversation is, with other people versus consciously engaging with the divine? It's a challenging thought.
And this naturally leads to the practical side. Okay, how do we actually do this? How do we cultivate this continuous connection?
Yeah, beyond the formal prayers or that special quiet time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Source emphasizes training ourselves, actively training ourselves to speak with the divine throughout the day, even if it's just short, simple phrases, little acknowledgments.
It suggests starting small, right? Like just acknowledging the divine in everyday things. Seeking help, maybe.
Yes, exactly. As you go about your day, you're making coffee, starting work, whatever, just taking a moment to recognize that the ability to even do that comes from the divine. It's subtle.
But powerful.
Very. And the transcript stresses this is just the starting point. The idea is to grow from just asking for help to actively sharing.
Sharing your life.
Yeah, sharing your experiences, your thoughts, the mundane details. It gives examples like, getting out of bed, doing the dishes, and seeing those not just as chores, but as moments to acknowledge, you're giving me the strength for this.
This connects to that idea of partnership, doesn't it? Partnership with the divine.
It does. Drawing on rabbinic teachings, it compares it to human partnerships. Think of a really close friendship or a marriage.
Right. Most of the communication isn't just making requests.
Exactly. It's about sharing life, sharing thoughts, experiences, just being together in conversation. It's not transactional.
So the ideal relationship with the divine, in this view, should move beyond just, please give me this, please help with that.
Towards a state of shared existence, a true partnership. The source talks about finding a new frequency of connection.
More intimate.
Yes, deeper, less giver and receiver, more mutual presence.
It mentions that beautiful verse, Ani le dodi vadorili.
I am my beloved's and my beloved is mine. Yeah, to illustrate that closeness, that intimacy that's desired.
Okay, so practically speaking, how do we foster this? What are the methods?
Well, the transcript lays out a couple of key approaches. First is verbal sharing.
Actually speaking out loud.
Yeah, consciously talking to the divine about your day, what's happening, acknowledging his role in it, making it a regular, intentional thing.
Okay, and the second?
Mental sharing, communicating through your thoughts, developing an inner speech or an inner dialogue with the divine.
So turning your internal monologue
into a dialogue, yeah. The source suggests this can fundamentally change how you think. It's like having this constant, wise presence accompanying your thoughts.
That's a profound idea.
And it highlights that both are valuable. Speaking out loud can be very grounding, very engaging, but that mental connection fosters this really deep internal shift.
Which all leads towards this goal of living in constant divine presence. Moving beyond just moments of connection to a state the source calls Nokaknai Hashem.
Living in the presence of God.
What does that actually feel like, according to the source?
It's described as feeling the divine presence as vividly, as tangibly, as if another person were standing right next to you.
Wow.
A constant, unwavering awareness. And the source is clear. This isn't just for mystics. This is presented as the intended direction, the purpose of life for a Jewish person.
To feel that presence always,
in good
times and bad.
Yes, in joy, in difficulty, through everything. The divine is always there.
Okay, that's a high bar.
Yeah.
How does one actually cultivate that level of constant awareness?
The transcript suggests a few things. One is regular contemplation.
Just thinking about it.
Consciously reminding yourself, frequently, I'm not alone. The divine is right here. Doing this during quiet moments, maybe speaking it, maybe just thinking it, building that mental muscle.
A dedicated solitude comes back in here too, right?
Yes, intentionally creating that space. Seeking out private moments specifically to internalize this awareness. The idea is the more you embrace physical solitude for this purpose, the deeper this feeling of divine presence can sink in.
Interestingly, it also talks about using feelings of loneliness.
Right. Reframing them. Seeing those times when you feel alone. Maybe you're surrounded by people but feel disconnected, or you're going through a life change like waiting to get married or separation. Seeing those as opportunities.
Opportunities to connect.
Exactly. Because in those moments, the divine might feel like the only constant presence. It's a chance to lean into that.
It even mentions social isolation, that feeling lonely in society.
Yeah. And while it says, sure, self-reflection might be needed, it also frames these moments as a reminder. The divine is always a companion, always there. It even calls the divine the friend of humanity.
That's a comforting thought.
And then it goes even deeper, talking about our innermost self. Those parts of us we can't really share with anyone else.
Our most private thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. The source suggests that unique space is specifically for connecting with the divine. It's a space only he can fully access.
So, bringing it back to speech as a tool, how does using speech help build this sense of presence?
A key point is using direct address, saying "ato you."
Making it personal.
Yes, structuring conversations, even internal ones, to acknowledge the divine as creator, sustainer, provider, addressing him directly as you.
And it's not just saying the word.
No, absolutely not. It's about focusing on that ato, that you, with real intention, with feeling. The practice over time is meant to deepen that sense of immediate presence.
Okay, but here's a potential issue. If we cultivate this very close, friendly you relationship, is there a risk of losing, the awe, the reverence?
That's a crucial point, and the source addresses it directly. It stresses the absolute need for balance between ahava, love, closeness, and yira, awe, reverence.
Can't have one without the other.
Well, the source warns that too much familiarity, too much of that friend feeling without the balancing awe, can lead to a lack of proper respect. It can become too casual.
So you need both, the intimacy and the recognition of greatness.
Precisely. cultivating that sense of closeness alongside a deep awareness of the divine's transcendence, holiness, and immense power. It references rabbinic ideas about this balance being essential.
It's not either.
No. In fact, the source suggests something quite profound, that the divine reveals himself most fully in that very place of paradox where love and awe meet.
Wow. Okay, so pulling back a bit, the ultimate point of all this, the purpose of creation itself.
Is connection, to cleave to the divine, dvekus. That's presented as the fundamental goal.
And this connection happens through
Our actions doing good, avoiding bad, through our speech, prayer, conversation, sharing, and through our thoughts, that mental communion, that inner dialogue. All three weave together.
Now, the speaker in the source seems to anticipate a question like, is this just for, super religious people or scholars?
Yes, and the answer given is very clear. No, this truth, this path, belongs to everyone. It's framed as a gift from the divine to the entire Jewish people.
It's not exclusive.
Not at all. It's presented as universally relevant and accessible.
So, building on that constant dialogue, where does this path ultimately lead? What's the final stage described?
It leads towards what the source calls hisbodedus shalema, complete, perfect solitude or connection, living in the continuous revealed presence of the divine.
Revealed presence, what does that mean?
Experiencing the divine as tangibly, vividly present as someone standing right there, like that face-to-face idea but integrated into life, that's painted as the ultimate goal we should be moving towards.
Okay, this raises a question for me about prayer. If we're aiming for this constant connection, how does that fit with the fixed prayers we say? Our feelings change day to day, right?
That's a really practical, important question. The source explains that the established prayers, the siddur, were actually designed for everyone at all levels of connection.
So they work whether you feel close or distant.
Yes. Within the same prayer, a person might connect differently, sometimes feeling that intimate ato you very strongly. Other times maybe feeling more of the hu, the transcendent he.
Wow.
So even someone who experiences this deep, constant presence can still use the standard prayers. They just understand them, experience them on a much deeper, more internal level.
So the hue is like the aspects we don't fully grasp yet.
Exactly, the parts beyond our current perception. While ato is what we can perceive directly, and the lifelong journey, in a sense, is to transform more of that hu into ato.
Got it. And just to clarify, the focus here is on presence itself, not necessarily specific attributes like divine mercy, for instance.
Right. The source makes that distinction. While attributes like mercy are incredibly important, this particular discussion is zeroing in on recognizing the presence of the divine being right here, right now.
So let's circle back to loneliness. If someone really cultivates this sense of constant divine presence, what happens to those feelings of being alone?
The transcript suggests they diminish significantly. That inherent human experience of loneliness, whether circumstantial or existential, is lessened because you have this constant companion.
A companionship that goes beyond human relationships.
Exactly. It's described as offering a taste of Gan Eden, of the Garden of Eden, even in this world.
That's quite a promise. But the source doesn't end there, does it? It's not just about personal enlightenment.
No, absolutely not. The ultimate purpose, the deepest layer, is to then take that connection and reveal the divine to the world.
Like Abraham.
Precisely. He's the model. First, he recognized the divine himself deeply. Then he spent his life sharing that awareness, bringing that light to others.
So the greatest kindness we can do
is to help awaken others to the divine presence, to that light. It's a progression. Recognize it yourself, then share it, so eventually everyone can have that full awareness.
Wow. Okay, so just to recap the main threads we've pulled out. There's this natural desire for connection.
Right, and using solitude not just for the moment, but to make that desire constant.
Rethinking religious life as an ongoing internal dialogue, not just scheduled events.
And really considering the purpose of speech, directing more of it consciously towards the divine.
We talk about practical ways, verbal sharing, mental sharing.
Seeing the divine in the everyday, building that partnership beyond just requests.
Leading to this goal of living in constant presence, Nulaknai Hashem.
Using tools like contemplation, solitude, even reframing loneliness.
And the importance of direct address, ato, balanced with awe, yira.
Remembering the core purpose is dvekus, connection through actions, speech, and thought.
And knowing this is for everyone, leading ultimately to that revealed presence.
We also touched on how this fits with standard prayer and how it fundamentally impacts loneliness.
And finally, that the ultimate point isn't just personal, but about sharing this awareness with the world. These are incredibly profound insights. They really offer a different lens through which to view, well, everything in daily life.
They do. And while it might sound like, a very lofty goal, the source emphasizes it's attainable. Through consistent effort, through shifting our perspective, integrating these small practices.
So a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe carry into your day. Where could you find just one small moment, maybe even during a routine task or a quiet pause, to consciously turn towards the divine, to turn that moment into a small act of connection? Just something to consider.
A great question to reflect on.
Thank you for taking this deep dive with us today.